Ganges, it's Sandra here again, ready for another really great wellness topic. So today I wanted to talk about some different things that you can swap out in your regular diet to make things a little bit healthier. So I'm in my kitchen here today. Hopefully there's nothing weird or too messy in the background. But I wanted to show you some different things that I use to kind of make regular recipes and everyday things that I eat just a little bit healthier. So I'm going to start with rice. So if you're eating just regular white rice, there's a few different things that you can try out that'll give you a little bit more nutrition. Probably my favorite one is quinoa. So this you can kind of just replace with any sort of rice dish that you are having now, but you get a ton more protein. You don't get kind of the spikes in your sugar levels that you do with white rice. And quinoa is one of the only plant-based sources of complete protein. So it has all of the essential amino acids that our bodies need. So quinoa is a really great one. Of course, you can just swap out brown rice instead of your white rice. And what that's going to give you is just a lot more fiber. That's probably the biggest thing. And then just more vitamins and minerals because it hasn't all been stripped out. So that's what white rice does versus the brown. You've got a lot of things stripped out because it's a bit more processed and refined. And then one of my absolute favorites is riced cauliflower instead of regular rice. So I was very hesitant about this when it kind of first became, all the big rage. And I thought there's no way that this is gonna replace regular rice, but it totally does. You're not even gonna notice a difference. You don't get all of the crazy carbs in there. It's another vegetable. Just sneak in those vegetables. And you just get a lot of, really great nutrients. You don't get a lot of the same, ups and downs with your sugars like I mentioned before. And it's super convenient. I mean, obviously you can make it yourself if you want and buy the actual cauliflower and put it in a food processor, but you can buy it bagged and it's already all done for you. I bought this huge bag at Costco and I just put it in the freezer so that it doesn't go bad, before I can get through it, and it's super easy. So those are some replacements for rice. Next up, I've got some replacements for our regular all-purpose flour. So if you're baking or things like that, a really easy one is just to use whole wheat flour instead. I use it basically a 1-for-1 in most of the recipes that I swap out. You can also just, maybe do half and half if you're just kind of getting started and getting used to, a little change in the taste and things like that. You could also do gluten-free if you need or are wanting to follow a gluten-free diet. Just be careful, not all of the gluten-free ones are kind of a 1-for-1 with regular flour. This one that I get happens to be, so I can just do the same amount of the gluten-free flour as I would normal flour. You can also do other types of like nut alternatives, like there's almond flour and those kinds of things. There's coconut flour. Those are all really great alternatives. I don't happen to have any here because I have a son with a nut allergy, so we don't buy that stuff. But those are really great. You just have to be careful of what the ratio is. If you're following a recipe that has just regular flour in it, it's not usually a 1-for-1. So you can kind of Google it and look it up depending on the type of flour that you are using instead. Well, that's another really great option. So if you're doing some more baking, so here's some other really great alternatives. So one of the things that I really love is using applesauce. So these are like those little kids, applesauces. I buy like a huge box at Costco. And you can use applesauce in place of butter or in place of like normal vegetable oil that would be in your recipes. I don't recommend that you replace both in the same recipe. You kind of get weird textures and things like that in there, but you can replace one or the other. And honestly, I don't even notice a difference when I use it. And most of the time, if you're replacing butter, you can usually do a 1-for-1 swap. So if it's half a cup of butter, you can do half a cup of the applesauce. And it is unsweetened applesauce, but it adds a nice sweetness still to it, I promise. The other thing that I like to do is, instead of just regular sugar, there's a lot of alternatives out there. You can use cane sugar, is a good one. It's obviously still sugar, but something a little bit better for you. You can use coconut sugar, those kinds of things. If you want something a little bit different, you can do the different types of stevias. That's a bit more natural. They even make one specifically for baking, so it's not too sweet. I personally like to use pure maple syrup in place of sugar. Yes, again, I realize it is still a kind of sugar, but I feel like it's a bit less processed and a little bit healthier for you. So I think that's a really great alternative. You could also do like really ripe bananas in place of things to add a little more sweetness. But probably the biggest and I would say easiest thing that you can do in terms of reducing the amount of sugar in your baked recipes is just put less than the recipe calls for. I promise you won't even notice a difference. For most recipes, you can about cut it in half and not really notice it. So try it out. And you can even just start out, slow. So if it calls for a cup of sugar in your recipe, maybe try 3/4 of a cup instead. And then you can kind of work your way down and just, see how it goes. But I would definitely start there. Just put less than what it is without even having to worry about any sort of replacement at all. Okay, so if you are trying to maybe cut out some of the unhealthy carbs, if you're doing sandwiches, burgers, things like that, you can do sandwich thins. We do these. This is honestly just a Kroger brand that we do. We do a whole wheat one. So they're just much thinner, so it's less there, but you still get the same, taste and everything that you're looking for. Another really great way to get less carbs for sandwiches and burgers is just to make them open face. So just don't have the top of your bun. So you've got the bottom, you've got everything else, and then that's it. So a fun little saying to go along with that, an open face is a happy face. So keep that in mind next time you have a burger. So another really great swap is to do plain Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. So this could be in dips, it could be in like Mexican dishes, it could be, like for tacos, things like that. A lot of different things that you can use it for. But you can get, obviously any kind of plain Greek yogurt, obviously not flavored. But I would really encourage you to have fat in it. Don't be afraid of fat. It's a healthy fat when it's in a Greek yogurt like this. I don't do the fat-free Greek yogurts. I do a fuller fat one. And it tastes great. And it's got a really nice texture. It's going to keep you fuller longer as well. But when you make a swap out with the Greek yogurt, you're adding a ton more protein and you're really not sacrificing any taste or anything like that. So that's a really great option there as well. Salads. So if you're trying to eat healthier, salad is obviously a really great way to go, right? That's all vegetables. But when you add the dressing, that's where it can kind of all go downhill. So one thing is, obviously you can make your own. So like a balsamic vinegar with olive oil, that's a really, great, easy combination. Any sort of vinaigrette. So if you stick with the more oil-based ones, that's going to be your best bet. If you just have a really hard time letting go of your creamy dressings like me, I absolutely love ranch dressing. You can dilute it a little bit. So, a serving size is 2 tablespoons. If you feel like, oh my gosh, I always go a little bit overboard, or you're just trying to have a little bit less on your salad, you can just dilute it with a little bit of water, put it in, like a tiny little cup or something, add a little water, mix it up. You still get the same great flavor. There's still going to be some of that nice creaminess to it, but not as many calories, and it's going to go a lot longer for you. You can do lemon or lime or anything, like that to dilute it with as well. Another really easy one that I like to do is to use olive oil instead of vegetable oil in anything. So even when I bake, almost all baking recipes, kind of, traditional baking recipes will call for vegetable oil, canola oil, whatever kinds of oils, and I always replace them with olive oil. So it's a little bit of a healthier oil for you. You get the right kinds of fatty acids in your diet versus the vegetable oils. So I like to do that as a really easy replacement, and that's just a 1-for-1 swap. If it's a cup of regular oil, I do a cup of olive oil. So those are some suggestions that I have for you that I personally use at home all the time. I would love everybody to comment on this activity and let me know what are some of your ideas for healthy, easy swaps that you could just make really tomorrow. All of these things are just readily available, very easy to get at a regular grocery store. It's not even honestly from any sort of health food stores or anything like that. So comment below, share your thoughts, and let us know what you think. Thanks so much, everyone.